A woman's last breath whispered the secret of life. A dying woman's final 3 words changed everything I thought I knew about life and death. This is that story. My name is Dr. James Miller. I had spent 25 years as a hospice doctor, helping thousands transition from life to death. I thought I understood everything about dying until my own terminal cancer diagnosis at 52. Suddenly, the man who guided others through death was terrified of his own mortality. I had watched countless patients take their final breath, counseled grieving families, and written extensively about the peaceful acceptance of death. But now, facing my own end in 6 months, I felt lost and angry. My faith in Buddhist teachings about death and rebirth crumbled completely. How could I counsel dying patients when I himself was consumed with fear? How could I speak about Buddha's compassion when I was drowning in terror? Everything I had learned, everything I had taught, felt like lies when applied to my own situation. My wife left me, unable to handle my transformation from healer to broken man. She said I had become someone she didn't recognize, bitter, angry, and obsessed with death. My medical practice collapsed as word spread about my condition. Patients lost faith in a doctor who couldn't face his own mortality with grace. James became the patient I used to treat, angry, desperate, and questioning everything I once believed about the meaning of death. I was a complete hypocrite, preaching acceptance while drowning in fear. 1 month before my own predicted death, I was called to see Mrs. Eleanor Chen, an 89-year-old Buddhist woman who had been my patient years ago. She was dying alone, abandoned by her family, who couldn't bear to watch her suffer, and she specifically requested me. When I arrived at the hospice, I was bitter and barely able to function. My own death sentence had made me useless as a doctor. But Eleanor looked at me with eyes full of knowing love, as if she could see straight into my tortured soul. "James," she whispered with a voice barely audible, "you're afraid of the wrong thing." I broke down completely, confessing my terror of dying. Here I was, supposed to be comforting her, and instead I was falling apart in front of a dying woman. But Eleanor just smiled peacefully and said something that stopped me cold. "Death isn't the end of the movie, dear. It's just the intermission." As her breathing became more labored and I held her frail hand, Eleanor said something that would shatter my entire worldview. "I can see Buddha's been waiting for me with such joy. He's celebrating my coming home." But it was her final breath that changed everything. With the last of her strength, she whispered 3 words that would echo in my soul forever. "Death is love." In that moment, I understood that I had spent 25 years seeing death as failure, as loss, as something to fight against. But Eleanor showed me that death was actually Buddha's ultimate embrace. She didn't die, she graduated. And in her peaceful transition, I saw death not as an ending, but as Buddha's joyful invitation to the next beautiful chapter.
Eleanor's words didn't cure my cancer, but they cured my fear. Instead of hiding from death, I embraced my remaining time with joy and purpose. I reopened my practice, but transformed it completely into something the world had never seen. I founded the Eleanor Chen Center for Sacred Transitions, where we taught families and patients that death isn't something to fight. It's something to celebrate as Buddha's homecoming invitation. We transformed end-of-life care from a place of fear and grief into a celebration of spiritual graduation. My approach revolutionized how the world viewed death. Patients who learned Eleanor's wisdom experienced peaceful, joyful deaths surrounded by celebration rather than mourning. Families learned to see their loved ones' final moments not as tragedy, but as Buddha's ultimate blessing. I lived 18 months longer than predicted, and those were the most meaningful months of my life. When my time finally came, surrounded by the community Eleanor had inspired me to build, my final words echoed hers. I can see Buddha, he's celebrating. The Eleanor Chen Center now operates in 60 countries, transforming how humanity views death. Eleanor's 3 words, "Death is love," became a global movement that shifted consciousness about mortality worldwide. My book, The Sacred Graduation, topped bestseller lists in 40 countries. Medical schools now teach the Eleanor approach to death care, treating the dying process as a sacred ceremony rather than medical failure. We've helped over 100,000 people transform their relationship with death. Funeral homes became celebration centers. Grief counseling became joy counseling. Death became what Eleanor always knew it was, Buddha's loving call home. If you're afraid of death, if you've lost someone and can't find peace, if you're struggling with mortality, remember Eleanor's gift. Death isn't the opposite of life. Death is love's ultimate expression. It's Buddha saying, "Well done, my child, come home." The secret Eleanor whispered with her last breath wasn't just about dying, it was about living. When you understand that death is love, you stop being afraid to truly live. You stop postponing joy, stop avoiding love, stop hiding from your purpose. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes. Feel the love that surrounds you, the love that will never end, the love that calls you home when your earthly journey is complete. That's Buddha's promise. Death is not goodbye, it's welcome home. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to know that death is love. Subscribe to learn more about transforming your relationship with mortality into celebration. Comment graduation if you're ready to see death as Buddha's ultimate celebration of your journey home. Eleanor taught me that our last breath isn't an ending. It's the moment Buddha finally gets to celebrate all the love we've shared, all the growth we've experienced, all the light we've brought to the world. Death is love, and love never dies. Comment graduation if you're ready to transform your fear of death into celebration of eternal love. Share this story with someone who needs to know that Buddha's greatest gift is calling us home. Subscribe for more wisdom that transforms fear into love.